know what, Mr. Allen? I think Coach Gibbs can come up and help you,
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion for adoption of the agenda.
Madam President, I move we adopt the agenda as presented.
Do I have a second? Are there any questions on the agenda? Can we have a vote, please?
All right, the vote is open. All votes are in and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all. So now we are up to school highlights, and I believe Miss Gibbs has got to come back up.
She sure is. Okay, Miss Gibbs, let's give her an applause. She has been donating time, effort, and resource. You come on up and I'm going to share with them a little bit and then turn it over to you. We partnered with Gibbs Elite Basketball Academy to hold a free basketball camp. It was, I guess, maybe 2-3 years in that you offered to do this at no cost at Topeka Public Schools at Chase for 5th through 8th grade students. The camp, well, she'll share a little bit about the camp's goals. But since then, the camp has grown, and she's also included other kinds of lessons, which I'm sure she'll talk about, and volunteers of students who just graduated. It's been amazing. I think Mr. Robbins, seems like it was just yesterday when Councilwoman Ortiz called and said, we got an idea for this basketball camp. We just need a space. And so with that, we want to congratulate her. But before we give the certificate, we're going to turn it over to her. She'll share a little bit about what they do with the camp and answer questions. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Tanaya Gibbs, and I am over at Gibbs Elite Basketball Academy. About 3 years ago, we reached out, my mother and I reached out, and we just wanted to put on a camp for the kids in 501. My vision was to target 5th through 8th grade students, both boys and girls. Free was the key word. That was, I think, what I was focused on. That's what I was using to sell it. Free, free, free. As we know, we have a lot of students that struggle in our district. I grew up in our district. I attended Lafayette Elementary, Chase Middle School, and Topeka High School. So I'm a proud 501 attendee. Okay. So my main goal was just to provide something for our youth, building relationships. A lot of them do not get to meet other students from other schools unless they're involved in something directly, like maybe a game or something like that. And even then, they're not able to actually build a relationship. We bring in different people from the community. We touch on different things from anxiety, how to deal with that, how to use basketball as a door to say, hey, this is how I deal with my anger. This is how I deal with my nervousness. I'm actually trying to tap in right now because I'm a little nervous. When I'm on the court, I'm not, but for some reason, when I get in front of a crowd, I get a little nervous. But, it's just taking the basketball and shooting a free throw, something as simple as that, and breathing out, breathing in, and calming the students down. And that also helps in the classroom, taking that walk and just counting down to 10 and just thinking about different things, taking a ball and dribbling it hard to get that anger out, the anxiety out. There's so many different things. We partnered with the community leaders, such as the police chief. Chief Willis has been awesome. The fire chief, we've just had Sheriff Hill. He joined us this year. We've had different people in the community that have come, and they've just talked about different careers that the kids can look forward to, and seeing that they're regular people, building that relationship. I think that's very important. We can talk to the kids and say, you're able to do this, but we need to show them. And so bringing them into their space is the thing for me. I think that's something that they can relate to. And it also pushes our community leaders to get into the kids' space and say, hey, so this is what you're about. It was amazing this year. We had a couple speakers that said, I've never been to Chase Middle School. I don't think I ever would have came over here. And again, to see the diversity. We have kids that are, some of them struggle with IEPs maybe, or they struggle with behavior, they struggle with maybe food at home. So we take care of that. We partnered with Chase Middle School. It's a feeding site. So the kids get to eat breakfast, they get to eat lunch. I've received so much feedback from parents, grandparents that are saying those 2 meals mean a lot, taken care of just for 4 days. So that's a blessing, and the fact that we're able to provide that and then also let other people know that it's here, it's available. That's another key thing. So just overall, the kids, they receive t-shirts. We have sponsors. One of our key sponsor, I have to shout him out, Lewis Toyota. Brad Lewis is amazing. He's seen my vision from the beginning and he's helped out from day one. And he's about the kids, and so we were able to provide free shirts for the kids. They walk away with the basketball. They walk away with the bag with Lewis Toyota on there, and it has different goodies from all around the city. And you know what? The biggest thing for me, it's free, but for me, my payment is the smiles on the kids' face. My payment is seeing the kids. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it's personal for me because growing up, my mom was a single mom. And I didn't get to attend the basketball camp until I got to high school. And if I would have had this opportunity at a younger age, and a lot of my friends would have had that opportunity, I wonder how a lot of the futures would have turned out. A lot of people look at it like it's just basketball. But it's bigger than basketball. I went to school with Lala, and we have a lot of kids that struggle with a lot of things. Thinks people are quick to look at the outside. They don't know the battles that they deal with internally. Going to sleep and hearing gunshots. I grew up on the east side. I still live there, and I still hear them. I've lost a lot of friends, and so this is personal for me. It's not for fame. It's not for glory. It's for the kids. They deserve this. And I feel like our kids deserve it a lot more. I hate to sound like that, but some of our kids are overlooked because they don't fit the criteria. They don't fit the stigma of, being able to afford going to certain camps. $10, $20, it adds up. It's a bill in a lot of households when you have multiple kids. So that's why free was very important for me, because I couldn't afford it. My mom couldn't afford it. So it's just from my heart, I thank you all for the believing in our vision, believing in me, and just for allowing the kids to be a part of something great. And I may not turn in all the kids into NBA or WNBA players, but you know what? If we can just touch one and change one life, that's a win for me.
First of all, let's give her another. I would like to give you the certificate of appreciation, Gibbs Elite Basketball Academy, for your investment in the lives of Topeka Public Schools and our students. And another question, we don't go too far, okay? All right, with that, we'll turn it over to the board. And she is also a staff member at Chase and a parent. When we piloted our daycare, part of that was because we heard from parents like Coach Gibbs that needed daycare, and her mom, and she was, I think, our first parent, at the pilot daycare. That's now a full daycare that opened today, actually. We'll turn it over to the board.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just your passion and understanding of our student population and your giving heart is so appreciated. And you just touched my heart. Is your mom here tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to introduce her? Because you mentioned her so many times about what a support she was for you. And obviously she's guided you well in life.
Thank you.
So would you like to introduce her?
My mom, Sylvia Ortiz.
Yes. So now you're all famous.
Thank you. I just want to say to the board, Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you
Thank you.
to Mr. Robbins. Thank you to the superintendent. Thank you. You know, Dr. Gray, yep, I can't forget Dr. Gray. Thank you. I got a little beef with him, but I'm all right. I'm okay. You know, it's hard to hear your child say that they have a vision, and it's hard not to fulfill that vision. But one thing I've learned in life is when God has something for you, nobody can take it away. And so we're just ecstatic about the growth and the kids that we've touched. If I may take a moment and just share, we had a little boy that he had some autism, and you really couldn't tell it until you kind of was around him for a little bit. But at the end of camp, all the kids were just like, go, go, cheering him on and just praising him for his accomplishments. So we don't turn anybody away. Tonight did not mention that this year we partnered up with Soul Reason, and kids got shoes as well. So they walked away with shoes from the camp, and they were ecstatic. She also forgot, and the social, or not the social workers, but the whole staff at Chase has been wonderful, from Principal Spalding to the cafeteria workers who are so pleased with the numbers. And I mean, they cook. They cook that week, and they have good food, and they just put their heart into it. So everybody's been real receptive, and we just thank God and thank you for that partnership. Thank you.
Do I have any other questions down the board here? It looks like Dr. Bombrick has a
I
question.
wouldn't bet against either one of you swishing a 3-pointer from mid.
Now, I didn't play basketball. I had to learn the game because of tonight.
I
So-
would-
so-
still wouldn't bet against you.
I wouldn't bet against her. That's only because he used to watch her play. Am I correct?
Mr. Munoz, please.
You know, I'm so happy that you both are here. I think my guess is that there are lots of other individuals who came up through 501, who graduated, who care as much about our young people as you all do. So my hope is that people can see what you've done and can be proud of that and say, and ask themselves, what do I have to give? You know, what are those things that I'm passionate about? And if we can be open to foster an environment where other people can feel just as empowered to be able to do things for young people. Lord knows that we need as much help as we can get, that our teachers, you know, work themselves to the bone. And when we have partners, individuals like yourself who have your, you know, your talents, and you use that to help them, lift them up, like we said yesterday at convocation, I think that we come out, everyone winners. So thank you all for all of your help. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to the next one. Yeah.
And it's free because it's by scholarship. So if you'd like to give, we accept credit cards, we accept cash, we accept whatever, because it's free.
Thank you so much. Oh, Mr. Tatum, yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Coach Gibbs and Councilwoman Ortiz, thank you both for being here. I've seen a little bit of information about this program, but didn't know the full depth of it. I'm glad you're both here this evening to enlighten us on everything that has gone into this program. And I have to tell you, and I agree with a lot of what Mr. Munoz just shared with us. This is important. And the fact that you're doing that work, particularly you, Coach Gibbs, it just speaks volume about the love and the character that you're building into this program and into our community. So thank you so much for what you're doing. I am eagerly going to be watching with great interest to see how this grows and develops, and keep up the great work. I'm happy to try to support it as best as I can.
Thank you both so much for your service to our community and for just pouring into our students and even our staff. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Our next recognition, I believe Mr. Robbins may be making some comments. It really takes a community to support all of our schools and all of our students, as we just heard from Coach Gibbs and Councilwoman Ortiz. Mr. Robbins, would you like to speak a little bit about Laird Noller Ford in preparation for this next recognition?
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. We have with us tonight, representing Laird Noller Ford, the general manager of Laird Noller, Morgan Franklin. And I think that it is certainly great to have Morgan here to accept the board's recognition and appreciation for years of contributions from Laird Noller to our students. If we go back just a few years, Laird Noller has been extremely generous as far as providing dollars to purchase school supplies, as well as supporting our college prep program. In total, including the $25,000 donation that is on the agenda for the board to accept this evening, they have contributed to Topeka Public Schools $70,000. And they continue year in and year out to find ways, despite what the economy may be doing to businesses like Laird Noller, they still find ways to support financially what we're doing here as far as our educational mission. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Morgan Franklin to come up to the podium to be recognized and address our board.
No, thank you. And so, as Mr. Robbins has already shared, the $70,000 over the course of time, this year, $25,000, buying all the uniforms for our college prep at Lowman Hill, and also pre-COVID sponsoring community events for the families in which supplies and all of the other things were given, but the schools were invited out and their families came to right next door to the dealership and had an opportunity to have kind of a mini carnival. They've just done so much in the last 3 years, sir. We appreciate you and everybody else that's part of the team. And this certificate says, Laird Noller Ford, Topeka Public, Laird Noller Ford from Topeka. We thank you for your $25,000 donation and support for students and families. And as Mr. Robbins said, the $70,000 over time. Let's give him another warm applause. We're gonna have a question for you. And sir, when we do take our photo, eventually, the big check for the board, we'll be holding this to acknowledge what he's done for us today. So we're going to ask both of you all to stay, because in about 5 minutes we'll take photos with the board. Okay, we'll turn it over to you, Madam President.
Welcome. We're so glad to hear from you tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We look at this as the beginning of the relationship. I know that we've been partnering and we've done some things prior, but there's more to come in the way that we look at it. So.
Well, you've done so much for us. It's hard for, just the words thank you to mean very much for what you have done to support our students and our families in our district. So that's the best I can do. Mm-hmm. We all say thank you from the board. We say thank you for loving on our Topeka Public School family so much. Thank you. Do I have any other questions from the board? Yeah.
Really, thank you so much. My question is, what makes you want to give so much to Topeka Public Schools?
Well, I stand here as the recipient of your gratitude and a representative of the company, but it's more to our company that the community is served. We're the oldest franchise dealer in Topeka. We've been Laird Noller Ford for over 60 years. We continue to grow and expand based on the support we get from the community. So we want to give that support right back. And as I said, we see this as the beginning. It's not anything that we take lightly. And we want to make sure that we continue to serve the community in so many ways. But we understand that our partnership with 501 is very important to the community. It's very important to us.
Any other statements from the board? We just thank you so much, and we appreciate you being here tonight to accept our gratitude.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to also tell Coach Gibbs, that's a great story with the camp and everything. And we hope to get involved in that way as well. So yes, thank you.
Nice.
And we'd like to take a photo with the board. That is our final recognition for this evening. All right.
So for people who might be watching online, we're going to take about a 5-minute break for those photos, and we'll be right back.
All right, Mr. Franklin, you want to start us off?
Thank you.
Someone else, Coach Gibbs? Councilwoman Ortiz?
Sammy, I'm sorry.
And Mr. Young, we'll let them show the video.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna test the audio real quick while you guys are in a break.
That's it. Yep, that is it. As we prepare to take our seats, we just want to mention, while not a highlight, we just want to mention that Dillon's grocery store provided all of the supplies that you see. They're not down as a highlight, but we want to make sure that the board knows that Dillon's allowed for, really had a back to school collection, and they allowed for us to put bins at their stores, and we thank Dillon's for their contribution. And these are all the things that were collected that were picked up this week. And then our convocation video, we will wait until the superintendent's report, and we'll just kick that superintendent's report off with the convocation video, and we'll turn it over to our board president.
That was some exciting highlights tonight. It was very, very heartwarming, and gratefulness for those. So we have public communications. Mrs. Lister, do we have anybody that wants to come forward tonight?
Madam President, we do not.
Okay, thank you. So we need, Mr. Tatum, I believe you have business by consent.
I do, Madam President. I move the board approve the items of business by consent as presented and authorize the board president or superintendent to sign the special project and purchasing contracts for and on behalf of the board.
And do I have a second for that? Mr. Munoz, any questions?
Actually, I have a few questions. So on the personnel report, there's a COTA. I just wonder what that stood for. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Certified occupational therapist assistant for those that are listening online.
Thank you. And then my next question was, so the KSDE, the Child Nutrition and Wellness Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, that's so exciting. So we have 7 participating elementary schools. I was just curious how it's decided which 7. Are you wondering that too? Yeah.
Wallace?
Yes, so that's a grant. And so it is put out as an opportunity for all schools to apply for.
Mhm. Oh, okay, okay, thank you. And last, so the vended contract to provide meals, so I know we provide meals for the parochial schools just because they're in our attendance area. But the SENT, this, that was a new one, I hadn't seen that before. SENT, the Early Prep Academy. I'm curious about Avondale East, so, okay.
Mr. Robbins, do you want to speak to that, or would you like for me to speak to that particular academy?
You can, because I'm not sure exactly what the SENT stands for, but I do know that it's a program that is housed currently at Avondale East that serves that community in particular. I know that they are in partnership in conjunction with Fellowship Bible East, which is a church that is located there. Yeah,
Okay, so it's private.
yes.
And I believe Ms. Yankee is here. Ms. Yankee, did you have anything that you'd like to add to the SENT program that's being asked of you?
1 second.
And I'm sorry, she may not have anything to add. Do you have anything to add? They asked about SENT. What was that program that we're partnering with? Mr. Robbins gave a brief explanation. Do you want to come to the microphone and add anything at this time?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Dr. Bonebright. A vote, please.
Vote is open. All votes are in and the motion carries unanimously.
We are down to superintendent's report, so that's going to be our video.
Yeah, we're going to kick off with the video, and then following that, we have parents here. Go right on ahead.
Right to public schools. I'm standing in the arena. We're just packing up from today. Wow, this morning was really something. In my 8 years, I don't know that we've ever had a morning like today, but here's what we got a chance to see. Literally husbands and wives loving on each other in so many different ways, winning prizes, also being in the stands, giving a shout out to their loved one. We got a chance to see how Topekans come together. Whether that nurse at Topeka High jumped right to it when there was a moment where we had a need that needed to be filled, we got a chance to see what believing in you looks like in action. So Topeka Public Schools family, have a wonderful start to the school year. Thank you for hanging in there with us today, and thank you in advance for showing that we are TPS.
Someone believes in you enough to lift you up. Try not to let them down. There are some kids in our district who life has already brought them down so low, and they need you to believe in them enough, in spite of the odds, to lift them back up.
Because you believed in me last year, I accomplished so much. Because you believed in me, that made my brain believe it could do anything. Because you believed in me and my friends so much more happened. Thank you for believing in me.
So with that video, this is a reminder to those that are listening, school does start next week. Yes, that did come around kind of quickly. And so next week, we look forward to welcoming back all of our families and all of our students. And as we do that, we also want to remind individuals that the very first day, it's K, 6, and 9. And then the second day of school, there will be all of our students. So who gets our students to school are parents. And tonight we have some parents in the audience. So our district parent advisory group, they are here this evening. The president and the officers will be coming up to the microphone to share a little bit about their study topic. So I'm going to turn this over to DCAC to take it from here. Ms. Collette, are you coming up, or who's coming up this evening? All right, Ms. Cushion. All right, so it's going to start off with Ms. Cushenberry and Ms. Collette, and then they will turn it over to our next DCAC member, and he will, and they'll introduce him.
Up here. Okay. Good, I think. All right. All right, good evening, Madam President and board members. My name is Lisa Collette, and I represent Topeka West on DCAC. I also have a daughter who attends McEachran Elementary School. And this is Sasha Cushenberry, and she represents McEachran Elementary School, and she's our current president for DCAC. So each year, the summer before we start a new school year, we always have a meeting with Dr. Anderson, Dr. Gray, to kind of go over what they're wanting for us to research during the following year of DCAC. So in 2021, 2022, the summer of 2022, technically, we met with them and several ideas were presented. You'll hear later about the other one that was accepted. But the one that we are presenting on is called Exploring Restorative Justice and Practices. And this was actually a suggestion given by Dr. Bonebrake. And so it was actually something that we kind of had heard about, but we didn't really know a lot about. So we knew that we were going to have to really research it, and figure out what is restorative justice and practices. What does that mean? What does it look like in schools? Is it already happening in the school district? If so, is it a district-wide thing, or is only certain schools doing it? So we concluded that our questions formed within 3 domains: purpose, parents, and staff. Questions, like I said, is the district already doing this? And what schools are doing it. Also, we wanted to know if parents even knew what this meant. And we kind of wanted to also know if parents had students that actually went through the process, one of the processes that arises out of this form of practice. With these, also, with this in mind, we also wanted to know what are the positive and negatives surrounding this topic. What does the staff think about restorative justice? And like I said, what do parents know about restorative justice and practices? Traditionally, with our study topics, we always will include a survey where we send out a survey to staff and also to parents. However, we took a little bit of a different approach because Dr. Morrissey, now retired, actually had already done this at Topeka High. And it was something that she actually started when she was the principal at Eisenhower Middle School. So Dr. Anderson actually advised us that it might be better to just kind of have a meeting with her instead of sending out surveys to staff, just because Dr. Morrissey had already done a lot of research and already implemented this into her schools that she was the president of. So that was what we did. We did like a building level narrative, and then we also had literature review as well. So through the literature review, and there we go. I think yes. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna leave that alone. Okay. So from our literature reading, we discovered that traditionally, any sort of form of like discipline in schools, across the country and even in our own state, results in punitive justice. And because of this, we read that, punitive justice is rooted in punishment. It focuses more on offense, zero tolerance approach to disciplinary action, resulting in detention, suspension, and expulsion.
Now, with restorative justice, we saw that it was rooted in reparation of harm, focuses both on both the harmed and the harmer, helps students make the right choices, consists of practices like talking circles, peer juries, and counseling. This resulted in higher graduation rates, better behavior among students and staff, and creates a safe environment for students to learn and grow. You can, okay. Let's see here. So several restorative practices are circles and mediation. And we'll kind of get to more to that later, but there's like about 8 different types of circles that are involved. And then there's different forms of mediation that can occur. And the great thing also about restorative justice is in practices that it involves the school community, it involves the family and the student. So it's something that, you know, the schools can use to help educate parents as well. You know, when that child goes home, they can maybe use some of these tips to continue on when they're at home. You can go to the next slide. So why do we need it? So it builds a supportive community to help all students succeed, helps students, teachers, and admin connect with each other and develop healthy relationships, recognizes the harm caused to others by incidents and misbehaviors. So it makes, you know, the person, the offender, recognize, you know, be accountable for themselves and recognize that, hey, you know, you hurt this other person when you did that. Understand the reason behind their behaviors, because that was something that some of the literature that we read was that, you know, we send these kids home, we suspend them from school, but they don't really have the resources or the mental capacity to understand, like, you know, what they did wrong. How can we resolve these issues? Supports the students as they make positive changes for the future and creates a way for students to make amends and repair damaged relationships. Go on. So restorative justice in schools. This cultivates a culture that values respect, relationships, and communities, values the development of social and emotional competencies along with academic instructions, empowers students, teachers, and staff to take an active role in problem solving and discipline, and handles behavioral incidents in accordance with those values, utilizing restorative practices first resulting in expulsionary approaches. Okay. So also, this also fosters empathy and respect for each other between student and student relationships, but also student and teacher relationships. Helps students learn to listen to each other, solve problems creatively, and resolve their own conflicts. So really, when you think about it, it's something that could really be done in any setting, even at your job. You know, some of the things we read is that it's as simple as it's like an icebreaker activity where, you know, in a class and there's differing opinions, you know, you could say, all right, we're going to take a timeout, we're going to have a circle time, and we're going to talk it out, and we're going to listen and be respectful and hear everybody's opinions and why they have that opinion. Seeks to understand the why of the student's behavior, and uses the use of circles and activities designed to give everyone a voice while developing a sense of community. And like I said earlier, there's about 8 different forms of circles. It just depends kind of on your need. And also with the peer mediation, it could be as simple as, you know, if a student's having a hard time in class, you know, the teacher can just take that student, step out into the hallway and have a one-on-one conversation instead of like having it in class in front of other students or automatically just sending them, just go to the principal's office. No, like we're stopping it. We're listening to the student. We're resolving the problem right then and there before it goes any farther, because it might be something as simple as like, you know, I missed breakfast today, so I kind of had a rough start. You know, I started off on the wrong foot. And so let's get you back on the right foot. You don't need to go to the principal's office. Just go ahead and go back into class. Okay. And I think, oh, okay. So through our reading, there are concerns and conflicts with this. Restorative practices are can be seen as being too lenient and ineffective towards certain behaviors. Some see circles and mediation as not effective when it's really effective when really it's a lack of education. Hard to get students to hold themselves accountable for their actions and want to repair the harm caused. Studies show that restorative practices takes time for training and implementation. It also takes a ton of support from the community and the entire school to be successful, which can lead to backtracking or improper implementation. One thing that we also saw is that minority students suffer from punitive justice practices more than white students, resulting in an imbalanced justice system, stating as young as 5. And for me, I work a lot with early education. And so to see a 5-year-old being kicked out of preschool is really upsetting to me. And I think that's ridiculous and should never happen. But it's, if we can get it to the point where, this doesn't happen, because you got to look at, like Coach Gibbs is talking about, you got to look on the inside and not just like what you're seeing on the outside. Like what is going on at home? Like she stated, kids may not be getting proper food. They're not sure, they're hearing gunshots, things like that. All those things, we talk about trauma-informed care, all that, comes to a head. And this is why these students are acting this way, but kicking them out of a place that might be considered like a safe place for them, where they know they're going to get food, they know they're going to get consistency, they know they're going to get nurtured, I think is not right. Let's see. Okay. One thing that we also saw is that there are some states, Alabama, or Arizona, Florida, and Nebraska are actually taking actions for a harsher discipline. This is just kind of for you to kind of look at, I guess. Do you have a video on there too, or no?
Okay, so we do have a clip that we were gonna show, but for the sake of time,
Yeah.
we'll save it. We do have it if you guys would like to look at it at a later date, but it had a lot of great information on restorative justice, and we have a little bit more to go off of.
Yeah. So kind of from that video, some of the things that came out of that was that non-white and Black students are disciplined more severely across every category. Half of the 250 kids expelled from preschool younger than age 5 were Black boys. Nationally, children suspended more than once typically are Black kids. So just the racial disparity with, especially when it comes to punitive justice, we feel we don't feel good about that, and we feel like with restorative justice and practices that some of that can be resolved. Let's see, what? Oh, okay. And then one more thing is that missing 15 days from the video, missing 15 days due to suspension makes it 7 times more likely to drop out, leading to less access to jobs, housing, participating in society, and shorter life expectancy. Let's see, what else do we have? What? Okay. I'm trying to think.
She's dropping the mic behind you.
Oh. Sorry. We'll move on to, I guess, our recommendations for the time's sake. So our recommendations include training for all administrators and staff in restorative practices, which can be adapted for use in elementary, middle, and high school settings. Dr. Morrissey also said that because I asked her about special education, since I have a child in special education, and if they use this for them, and she said yes, that it worked well for children in special education. So, which was A+ for me. But what I'm saying is that it's something that can be used for everybody. Training can be tailored based on the level of familiarity with restorative practices and should focus on building relationships and problem solving at all levels of the school. The Topeka Center for Peace and Justice is recommended as a partner in implementing these practices, and Dr. Morrissey also has used them quite a bit to help. And the lady, I cannot remember her name at this time, but she was also in the meeting with us. If all staff and administrators are professionally trained, it will help them feel more prepared and confident to carry out the process of the program. Another recommendation is to provide parents with monthly restorative practice guides to try at home. This will outline expectations and directions on how to implement these practices within the homes. It helps educate parents on restorative justice and provides a positive outlook outside the school community. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Any questions? Oh, yes, Dr. Bloomberg.
I've always thought it was better to help a troubled child than to fix a broken adult. But part of it, I wonder, 30 years ago, we switched from grade school, middle school, high school to, changing junior high to a middle school. Sixth graders moved in with seventh and eighth graders. And the sixth graders are kind of babies and getting their hormones screwed up. And the ninth graders are sort of babies in high school. I just wonder if that isn't part of the problem.
Are you just meaning based on like maturity level?
Right.
Yeah.
If that doesn't aggravate all these emotional troubles that we exacerbate. Yeah.
Just to, just to piggyback off of that, you are very right. You know, a lot of the things that our kids are going through, like we said prior, you know, takes a toll on their everyday. And one of our recommendations for having the teachers and the staff, you know, properly trained for this is for those reasons, so that they know how to handle those types of students in those situations. So.
Mr. Tatum.
Thank you, Madam President. And thanks to the both of you for being here to present on this very important subject. I'm a bit knowledgeable about restorative justice. A lot of what I learned about it, I learned from Ms. Morrissey. But I'm a huge fan of the concept of redemption. And I think that principle is front and center when it comes to how restorative justice practices play themselves out. I'm a little I'm very interested, I guess I should say, on seeing how we can begin to expand on the restorative justice practices here in Topeka Public Schools. And in looking at the report that you all put together for this presentation, it seems like the only example, the only USD 501 example we have is what Ms. Morrissey is doing. So I think I would be interested in seeing how we could begin to develop this a little bit more. One of your recommendations was to provide training for TPS staff on restorative practices, but I think we got to see some harder data, some more concrete, not hard necessarily, more concrete, substantive data. And maybe what we ought to do, what we should really think about maybe is piloting this at some key locations around the district to kind of gather some more data. I think this could really take off. But I think we need to be very intentional about starting slow and methodically in this process. And so that's kind of where my thoughts are. I'm just kind of bouncing those ideas off of my fellow board members and administration, and really kind of interested to see where this goes. Thank you.
You know, Mr. Tatum, one of the things we can do is this is being used as well in the juvenile correctional facility. It started at Eisenhower as well with both Ms. Morrissey and Ms. Giardina. And in fact, there's a PBS special with Ms. Giardina being featured, having circles. And so using our staff development days, we can meet back with the Center for Peace and Justice. That's who they met with when they met with Ms. Morrissey as well, and get the data. And if the board is interested in that as a next step, provide the data of the effectiveness and ask our administrators as we are, incorporating Boys Town and all the other techniques to address discipline to present restorative practices. I think pieces of that are likely used in schools across the district in different ways. But the training at a greater depth, partnering with Peace and Justice is a step we can take should the board want us to begin to explore that.
I was just gonna say one thing. We did find out too that some of the practices are being used at Highland Park, but not to the extent, I don't think, as Dr. Morrissey had it done or is doing it. She did say that she does have modules in place already that she could even share to help as a starting point as well.
Mr. Munoz.
Yeah, I think I agree that it'd be great to be able to see the impact and the effect that's, as a result of Ms. Morrissey implementing this at Topeka High. And I think it'd probably be a pretty good information for any new principal who's looking at this, who knows they're dealing with some issues and some behaviors that need to be addressed and trying to figure out what can I do. So more data would be good just for our sense and surety to make sure that this is something that has the numbers show is effective. And obviously for those principals and teachers who are trying to figure out how do I make sure that I have an environment that's where everybody can learn. So, yeah.
This is Stuart Campbell.
Thank you. This was very informative. When I saw that this was your topic, I thought, oh, good. This is a subject that I really wanted to learn more about. And I completely agree with Mr. Tatum and Mr. Munoz and what you said, Dr. Anderson, about how we could work in conjunction with the Center for Peace and Justice and perhaps pilot at an elementary and middle school. And okay, now a question. So it is completely like integrated, yes, at Topeka High. And okay, so like 100% at Topeka High, and then like partially you mentioned at Highland Park.
Yeah, I should have introduced, she's not here, but Nikki is also in our group, and she knows I think a pair at Highland Park, and she had said that they did know about this practice and that they have used some of it. So I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to get them on board to continue. But yeah, it is, as far as we know, it is completely implemented at Topeka High.
Okay, and so we'll continue to be with Miss Morrissey's retirement. Is that right? Now I'm looking at Dr. Anderson.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things is to really ask the principals, is it implemented and how fully at all of their buildings? I mean, that's one piece as a first step. Since Ms. Jardina continued it at Eisenhower through her entire tenure, I suspect, the level of implementation is probably significant where she's at now. So we'll ask that level of implementation of our staff as part of that data collection.
Yeah.
And then, but we from an administrative standpoint, strongly support restorative practices in the sense of reflecting on helping young people reflect on not only the harm in which is done to the community, but how they are restored, how they're able to give back and grow from that and learn from that. So we're excited about what's been done at the JDC. Also, Avondale West Restorative Practices is reflected with Dr. Grimes and the work she does with counselors. So we'll get some more data for you, bring that back. And we're excited about the training ahead that could be possible for administration across the district.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is just thank you guys both. Big fan of DCAC over here. More of a clarifying question, and it may be for Dr. Anderson, Ms. Wallace. When we look at CI3T as far as the structure to kind of support our students, that's not mutually exclusive from restorative justice. Those can live together.
So CI3T is our framework. So yes, within that, we use a social emotional curriculum that is separate and integrated into our framework. So yes, they can live together.
And Dr. Schumacher, one of the structures we have, for example, within CI3T is the nationally known OLEAS bullying prevention program. And so when we talk about, again, young people reflecting on the offense, all of these pieces really can fit together quite nicely. in helping students become productive in the community.
Dr. Bowman.
I think Dr. Anderson summed it up pretty nicely a little bit earlier, but we do know that our traditional discipline, expulsion, suspension doesn't work. And restorative justice really has when it's conducted appropriately. You get the abuser and the abused together with parents, counselors, and they see how everyone's affected. So I think some data collection's okay, but what we've been doing ain't working.
I just want to thank your whole team for spending so much time on this and bringing back some very interesting information for us. And it's quite obvious you have piqued the interest of the board. So job well done. And your PowerPoint was point on. Nice job. It was really well done. So thank you. Thank you both for, and all of DCAC for all their work on this. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Next up, our next topic is our sleep schedules. Mr. Michael McGuire will be up to present.
Welcome, Mr. McGuire. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
I know you're going to inform us and educate us further, so thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. I'm gonna test out the remote real fast to see.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. All right, so you see the title of our project and our team members, one of which is here tonight. Veronica Munoz is here with her children. I want to thank her for being here this evening. The topic that we set out to look at it's an interesting topic. For this presentation, I want to talk a little bit about kind of what are we talking about when we say sleep schedules, student schedules, and school start time, and then how we approach trying to learn more about the topic, as well as a little bit about the scholarly research that has been conducted on this. After, I'll say a little bit about the survey that we sent out and share some of the survey results, as well as provide recommendations. So apparently the topic was introduced 2 years ago, and we started working on it this past year. I had an intrinsic interest in the topic. I'm a cognitive psychologist at Washburn University. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, I am a representative from Jardine Middle School. I have a 7th grader there, have a sophomore at Topeka High, incoming freshman at Washburn University who graduated from Topeka High this past year. And then my oldest daughter is at Wichita State. She'll be a junior this coming year. But anyway, I had an intrinsic interest in sleep because one of my master's students looked at sleep and the association between sleep and mental health disorders. So right away, I'm like, oh, let's learn some more. I had not thought about the effects of sleep deprivation on kids and what toll does that take. We went ahead and started interviewing district staff. What was probably the most enjoying aspect of this, besides reading the research, of course, is talking with students. So we had some students that we spoke with, some Topeka High and some other students as well. We conducted a narrative literature review. So looking at what published research is out there, and there's a ton. There's a lot of research that dates back to the 90s, looking specifically at students and school schedules. We also surveyed parents and staff. All right, so for the literature review, I do have some notes. One of the things that I and my team members were most interested in is there's a lot of research suggesting that, especially for middle school and high school students, they need to sleep in. And my question is why? Why is that? And it turns out that starting at around puberty, there's a shift in circadian rhythms. And so the technical term is there's a shift in morning evening preferences, with evening being preferred throughout adolescence, starting at puberty and peaking at age 17. The technical term is a sleep phase delay, something I had never heard of before. And what happens if they don't get the sleep that they need? What are the consequences? There's, as you can imagine, if you don't get enough sleep, just imagine that with younger children. Consequences, poor academic performance, especially, this came up several times in the literature, especially among marginalized students. Reduced cognitive function, impaired memory and attention, increased risk of auto accidents, which I was surprised to learn, but it makes sense. I can't focus. I'm more likely to make errors. Now, here's what I did know about increased risk of mental health illnesses. So we're going to see potentially higher rates of depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. Irritability. The other thing that came up in the literature is an increased risk of physical health ailments, such as obesity, cardiovascular problems, and a weakened immune system. So if we can get the desired amount of sleep, what can we expect to find based on studies that other schools have conducted? One of the things that was very robust was increased sleep duration. You will find that students sleep longer if you give them that opportunity. And as a result, you see increased sleep quality. Now, this is not as strong of an effect. It's a small effect, but it's still being reported. Increased academic performance, reduction in absenteeism, improved mental health, reduction in accidents and injuries associated with drowsy driving. Of course, trying to change the school schedule is going to inherently have challenges and considerations. And some of those challenges have to deal with extracurricular activities, transportation, scheduling for schools and families. The articles that we reviewed talked about just being very careful in the planning and the coordination among stakeholders and sharing with them the benefits of improved sleep and the overall well-being in our students, which would hopefully outweigh some of these other challenges. On the next slide, I have just a few of the sample survey items, and we crafted a 15-item survey for parents. You'll see some of the items on there. We crafted a 10-item survey for staff members. These are just a few of them. Unfortunately, given the size of our district, we only had 34 respondents for the parent survey item, and we only had 49 staff responses. So if you do look at the report and you see the results, right, we're talking percentages, but it's really based on a small sample size, which is very underpowered if you want to try to generalize what's going on. Nevertheless, I have some results to share with you, just a couple. So with regards to staff, I think the window's covering the subheading. So for the staff results, you see approximately 82.61% of staff agree with sleepiness affects student engagement and learning, and less than half of those that responded were in favor of adjusting school start times. When looking at the parent survey, and as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have a great turnout. And the other thing, before I say a little bit about this, the more we looked into this and we learned about the relationship between age, and we started thinking about this really applies to middle school and high school students. We only had, of those that responded, 10 from high school. So 10 of the results speak to high school students. And for middle school, let's see, I want to say 8. So we didn't really have a great, oh, here we go. We had 9 middle school respondents and 10 high school respondents, parents from those families. Anyway, regardless, we are seeing that some students get at least 8 hours, if not more, but this is primarily in elementary school. And overall, we have 41.18% that say that their children wake up well rested. And again, this is primarily elementary, not middle school and high school. As an afterthought, I was talking to Mr. Kipp, Dr. Kipp, and I got the raw data because it was provided to us in aggregate form. When I started breaking it down, I was like, oh, geez, we don't have as many responses for middle school and high school as I would have liked. The thing that I will call to your attention here is, well, if you're going to change the time, what should you change it to, right? And what the American Academy of Pediatrics has suggested is 8:30 and 9 o'clock, no later, no earlier than 8:30. In fact, California, the state of California has enacted legislation, and I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago, where high schools do not start before 8:30. I'm not so sure about middle schools. New York is on track to enact similar legislation. And I think Washington, the state of Washington is as well. The other thing that came up, we had an open-ended response on our survey, and there was evidence to suggest that we need to provide support to students that potentially have issues at school. Maybe part of the issue is they're not getting enough sleep. The other thing is providing resource to parents so that they know what's going on and why going to school early why not getting enough sleep could potentially impact their performance at school. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the following individuals. Mr. Larry Robbins is here today. Thank you for your input on the busing schedule. The other people that we do not have up here are the parents and the staff that completed the survey. We also thank those that did complete the survey. And I conclude with that.
Any interesting questions from the panel here? Mr. Tatum.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for being here, Dr. McGuire, and for your presentation. Appreciate what you came to share with us. So I think I have to completely agree with you on the lack of the robustness of your sample size. I think that's really unfortunate based on the importance that I think this issue has and the attention that it deserves. Any thoughts about the DCAC going back to the table on this, trying to figure out a way to maybe disseminate, to continue this work and disseminate the information in different ways in order to increase the level of community participation on these surveys? I sure would like to see you guys take another bite of the apple.
Right. No, so this is an afterthought. During the process, this was my first year on DCAC, and I was unclear on the process and the different stages. Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be something that we would probably work with Dr. Kipp on. I think Dr. Gowan, Mr. Gowan, I think. Yeah. Yes. So I think Mr. Gowan, I forget how the survey got pushed out and how to try to encourage more folks to share the results and really target middle school and high school families more than elementary, because that's what we're looking at here in terms of what the literature suggests.
Yeah, right. Okay, great. Thanks.
Mr. Bonebrake, or Dr. Bonebrake, I'm sorry.
First question, how many surveys were sent out for the return we got?
Dr. Kipp, can you just share how many families we have talking? in terms of surveys for middle and high, you're talking a couple thousand.
Yeah, I believe it was shared by Dr. Gray as a link for all potential families. It really is a matter of timing sometimes with these surveys. I think it came late spring and there was somewhat of a survey fatigue. You know, this might have been the 15th survey that we're asking parents to do. And so in retrospect, maybe doing it earlier, you know, in the fall, something like that.
Yeah, and maybe not
It went out to,
mail, it was email.
it was via email and I believe it went out to every family. Well, that's a tough question. I mean, we're talking thousands of families essentially.
Yeah, not everybody looks at their emails that regularly. But so the circadian rhythms have changed because when I was in high school, we took a 0 hour. The majority took a 0 hour, which started at 7 o'clock because we had after school activities and we had to get all our classes done. So we started at 7. Now, getting to bed earlier doesn't seem to help these changed circadian rhythms.
No. Yeah. So if you've ever, and I've experienced this firsthand, with 4 daughters, well, 3 that are definitely in that phase, tell them to go to bed at 10 and they're still up and they say, I can't fall asleep. And you make sure they're away from their electronics.
Yeah.
They potentially have a good point. They have a good argument in terms of their circadian rhythm, the biological rhythm there. Yeah. Now that's not to say that there aren't other students. This is a generalization, but that tends to be the preference is a shifting towards nightness versus morningness, lightness.
So teenagers have changed in the last 70 years. Because we were all inspired, let's get the schoolwork done so we can get to our after school activities.
Yeah, you know, it's something that did come up is, and I don't know if this accounts for that or not, or if it just wasn't well known or investigated or researched. But there is something about this lighting. There's something about devices that potentially affects our circadian rhythm to a certain extent. Now, I know that blue light is makes it harder to go to sleep regardless of who you are. That came up in my master's student thesis, that there's been a lot of research looking at blue light. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I used to go 48 hours when I sleep, which is why I probably became an obstetrician. But nevertheless, everybody needs different amounts. But
this is true.
Getting to bed a little earlier without your electronics ought to help. But how do parents who have to be at work at 8 get their children to school at 8:30?
Busing, other parents, other students that drive. We did have some indicate their mode of transportation. Busing was the most popular, but again, a lot of them were in elementary school. That would be one idea, suggestion.
Dr. Schumacher, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. I think probably a few comments and a question. I don't know. As a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics, I think that when we get bogged down in the numbers of surveys, I think maybe we're looking at the wrong thing because there's plenty of evidence in large numbers that delaying start time helps performance. And so I think if we want to look at numbers of surveys from our parents and our students and our staff, it would be more, in my opinion, coming up with the logistics or an example of the logistics, because that's where the rubber meets the road. I mean, I think we can all say, this is a good idea. It makes sense. There's a lot of evidence that it makes sense, but man, it really seems hard to do. Like Dr. Bonebrake said, it seems hard, and the American Academy of Pediatrics kind of says, well, figure that out. and doesn't provide a lot of great evidence. They say, well, maybe some of those concerns are unfounded, but I would suspect probably some of those aren't. So if maybe before we looked at another survey or looking at the same survey, maybe we provided options of what it would look like and kind of getting parents and students feedback on that. I will say, as somebody that talks to teenagers on a daily basis from a lot of different schools and a lot of different backgrounds, I do know there is also some family and individual responsibility with sleep practices, and that kids are on their phones way too late every single night. And that delaying start time helps them get a little bit more sleep, but there's still, in the American Academy of Pediatric report, says that delaying start time is one factor, but maybe as part of this outreach, if this is something that we want to look into, it's also providing education and support to the parents and the patients. When I see, or the students, when I see kids and they say, well, it's my alarm clock or it's my white noise, I say, there's a $5 alarm clock at Walmart that doesn't have Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok on it because they just endlessly scroll for hours on end. And so I think that it is it's very valuable information. And I think that the evidence is there that it works, but I'd be interested in, how do we make it work for our district and our students and our parents, and then maybe getting more feedback on that.
As an informational piece, there were some focus groups and student feedback from high school through the student advisories. There's one at every high school. And there are some next steps that could be taken to further explore this. Surveys aren't the end and be all, and it gives you just one data point. Other data points are parent focus groups. We have the parent, often when the DCAC comes together, and many of these individuals and officers were new, that study topic starts to form around November, really, after the parent conference date. So that's that timing piece. But there are ways that we can create those conversations around this topic. The other piece is this has been studied before for this district historically by DCAC. And it may be helpful to know what were those outcomes and recommendations and what happened in that space. But here's some things that students shared as informational. They shared that many of the students and the superintendent's advisory, which are high-performing students, all work and some more than one job. And many felt that even if school were delayed, they would further work more. The other piece was the after-school activities. Many of our students who are in multiple activities right after school, and all the other schools around us, they compete with. And so they certainly didn't want school to end later if it started later. So to that end, one group, I believe it was Topeka West, and then later Highland Park also mentioned, and I believe Topeka High as well brought this up, that there's a late start for elementary that, the middle school and high schools don't, benefit from. And so exploration around that topic was encouraged by our young people, allowing that, for example, if it were on a Monday, allowing, especially on a block schedule, an opportunity to get rest, get caught up with the things that you missed for the week, having that extra day. So there's so many options there that if this were a topic that the board would like to dive deeper in, the feedback loop could be quite creative that I think we can do, from focus groups to the online chats, to the parent conference piece, to the paper surveys. So those are just some thoughts if you want to direct us to look further at this topic and have administration explore.
Yeah, I'd be very interested in the administration further exploring and thinking about the different start times. So elementary is 8:40, right? And the middle school 7:50, high school 7:55. Is that accurate? Okay. So I'm wondering, and I'm looking to Mr. Robbins. So the reason for the different start times is transportation, right? We need to stagger it for the bus drivers. Right. So I wonder if maybe it would be that difficult to just swap that and have secondary, I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this, and have secondary, have elementary start earlier and then secondary start later. So, and then thinking at the high school, there isn't transportation, you know, they drive themselves or take city bus. So I don't see where it's an issue.
That topic
transportation
did
at high
come
school.
up. And so elementary would then get out earlier, and many of their babysitters are their siblings in the middle and high. So then the middle and high would still be in school, unavailable to walk young people home, babysit and things like that. So that that could create a challenge in that regard, but that was something that was also discussed.
I had a question. I believe you said in your study, you found that there was a small difference in academic performance.
The effect, yeah, so the effect wasn't as strong as some of the other effects. So the effect size. So in some studies, you see stronger findings for increased academic performance. In other studies, it's not as strong.
So there's no particular strong data that says it will improve an academic performance if we had students go later at the high school level.
No, that's I would expect if you found some, well, okay, so just thinking about it from a statistical perspective, you do have, I would say that you would expect to find something in the positive, but I wouldn't expect it to be huge. What was pretty fascinating though was when there were differences and when there was improvement, that was typically from marginalized groups of students. So those who benefit are more likely to be underprivileged. That was, yeah, that was very fascinating.
Very. Okay, thank you. I that was a surprise to me when you said it didn't improve academic
Wasn't as strong,
performance.
yeah,
It's
that
very,
effect was
very
a small
prominent
effect size.
in the research. I would think that would be one of the first things that would pop out. So that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
We just really appreciate, as we said before, all of your efforts on this research and all of your team. I'm so glad to see Ms. Munoz back there to back you up. And those 3 great looking kids. I think I know who they belong to. But we just thank you for all of this effort and information that you bring to us. We really appreciate that.
I appreciated the topic. So not only has the American Academy of Pediatrics, but the CDC, the Surgeon General, I mean, I was surprised to see all these kind of like major medical health related organizations on board for pushing back the start time, especially for high school students. It's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Thank you for coming tonight and presenting for us. We appreciate it very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. So, Dr. Anderson, before we leave the superintendent's updates, I made a statement at our last meeting about having some positions still open in our district. Seemed to cause a little bit of an uprise, even though I had faith in our district. So I was wondering if we could have maybe an update on positions being filled in our district at this time.
Ms. Ramberg, are you behind me somewhere? All right, Ms. Ramberg's going to come to the microphone. As she comes to the microphone, we do have a report on review to review and discuss academic achievement. So it's perfect that you asked that because that impacts academic achievement in regards to teachers in the classroom. Can you give just a brief comment in that regard? We're also going to be reporting on this at the next board meeting when Ms. Nicole Johnson is here as well, after school is fully underway. I'll turn it over to Ms. Ramberg.
Yes, so we were able to, after the last board meeting, we have filled all of our classroom vacancies with licensed staff. So we are ready for the students to arrive.
So we are so grateful and thankful for you all down there getting that done. Thanks for doing that. And I know parents will be very glad to hear that information as well.
Yeah.
So great work.
A lot of hustle. Not on my part, but on my staff.
Well, and it is a team effort.
It really is.
So from the general director to the director to the principals, and Mrs. Johnson will be here next board meeting to give an update in that regard. All right, thank you so much, Ms. Ramberg.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So now I can brush my brow and go, yeah. It's so great to hear, isn't it?
Ms. Stacy Kramer is coming forward to address the legislative HB 2567, Section 12 legislative mandate that as Stacy Kramer comes forward to review and discuss academic achievement and the needs assessment. Ms. Wallace will start us off as Ms. Kramer is still coming forward and we at the end will entertain questions. Ms. Wallace?
Yes, good evening. So we wanted to share with you some of those requirements
First slide.
as part of that law, which is that the Board of Education must document the following: the barriers that must be overcome to have all students achieve proficiency above level 2, any budget actions, including but not limited to recommendations on reallocation of resources that should be taken to address and remove such barriers, the amount of time the board estimates it will take for all students to achieve proficiency above level 2 for grade level academic expectations on state assessments if such budget actions are implemented. So one of the, some of the steps that we've taken this year as it relates to having a building needs assessment, all buildings have a building leadership team, and those teams met several times. They meet twice a month after school. But they also met to review data as part of our root cause analysis. And we did that over the course of 5 hours at Bishop during 2 evenings. So all building leadership teams came together and they reviewed data, lots of different kinds of data. They looked at attendance data and discipline, demographic data, assessment data. Really, we collect a lot of data. So they determined some of their barriers that they encounter and then created their improvement plan around those, writing SMART goals, using and developing their professional development plan, their after-school programming, and their family engagement plan as part of the result of those root cause analysis.
And Mrs. Kramer.
All right, great. So one of the things that we noticed as we looked at the needs assessment is there were some definite commonalities. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that. A high level of chronic absenteeism was mentioned repeatedly in truancy, high levels of mobilities between schools, both within and outside of Topeka Public Schools, a lack of transportation for families to attend. And this is not only for school, but also thinking about attendance at events as well. Communication strategies are difficult sometimes and due to first language differences. For example, Spanish, Russian, and Ukrainian. They also noted limited technology access for families at home, and then less than optimal engagement with families in education of their children, as well as their involvement in the school community. Increased numbers of students needing tiered supports, both in academics and in social needs, and more students with students demonstrating greater need, both due to poverty and to trauma. So we took a look at some of the things that we are addressing in our needs assessment related to those common needs. So for example, there was a pretty big outcry about technology. And so we are in the process of replacing all of our Promethean boards, which are outdated, with new smart board technology. So teachers are really excited about getting that and getting ready to get started on that. We've also done a lot in our budget with mental health support. For example, we have mental health interventionists, deans of students, our mental health intervention team grant. We serve 18 buildings with that grant, which is fabulous with interventionists. We do increased MANT training. We're trying really hard to get that out to more of our staff members. I just trained today, as a matter of fact, with paraprofessionals. So we got a few more
trained, so they're ready to go for the school year. And we focused on the IIC and base repairs to really, because that's really the most high need group of our students. We also noted a need for more administrative support. So we made some position changes. We added assistant principals and building leader interns. And we did more trauma-informed professional development. For example, Mrs. Mills had a speaker come from Stormont Vale, and the mental health teams have been trained and prepared to actually help teachers with some of their needs. And so they're hoping to roll that out this year as well. Some of the positions that we added, just if you're curious, we added a dean of students at Highland Park High School, mental health interventionist at Topeka West. At Eisenhower, we added both a dean and an assistant principal to really boost their administrative support. At Highland Park Central, we added a learning loss interventionist through ESSER funding. So they'll have an extra person there. At Jardine Elementary, we added an assistant principal. They have such a large group of kids. We felt like that was a really important thing to do. Ross Elementary, we added a second mental health mentor, so they'll have two. Most buildings just get one. And at Robinson, we added an additional dean of students to give them some support. And of course, at Randolph, we added an additional building leader intern. So we also had some concerns about our student attendance. And so some of the things that we added with regard to our student attendance are the Topeka Metro Partnership and our School Skype Council, as well as increased social media coverage. We also added for our interpreter translator services, Propio district interpreters and and translators. We also have greater improvement of our family engagement by increasing our communications team as a resource. We added s'mores accounts for the principals to use with their principal updates, which has been very powerful as well as TPS website updates and social media, and then building our family engagement plan. Okay, S'more is a platform that we use. Mrs. Wallace uses it for our principal update, and it's a very beautiful format, and it gives a lot of information to our parents in a nice format as well. So we also, Mrs. Wallace has invested in increasing our literacy and math intervention resources. Some of the things that she has purchased in addition this year are Little Blossoms decodable readers. I think you guys approved these a couple of times ago. Benchmark Phonics. She's also invested a lot in our Spanish phonics this year, which is a brand new resource that we're doing as well as high quality staff. In our budget, we have, our parent to teacher programs, our apprenticeship programs. We've done hiring fairs, which obviously from what Ms. Ramberg has said, that's a great boost to our district. And I will let you know in our needs assessment, when you get the copy at our next board meeting, we do address that. So we spell out exactly which positions are open as part of the needs assessment. So you can see that very clearly. And then transportation to students, we've addressed that we've got a little bit of ESSER funding that takes care of our elementary and middle school. But of course, with high school, we have our Topeka Metro Partnership, which is doing great things in our district for that. So, all right, I think I hit it all. Are there any questions that we could answer?
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure.
It was a lot of work and really appreciated. So looking at the school-based need interpreter translator and the budgetary action, so the common barriers, of course, our students whose native language is not English, the vast majority are Spanish speakers, but as you pointed out, we also have Russian and Ukrainian now, but not to the extent like we have native Spanish speakers. So the budgetary action, you mentioned Propio and district interpreter translator. Does this mean that because the district interpreters and translators are the EL bilingual paras? So when we say the budgetary action, does that mean they move up in the pay scale? I'm thinking of like the public comment we got a few weeks ago as well. So for that very important skill that they bring, I'm just wondering what that budgetary action actually means.
So over the last couple of years, we've had employed additional translators, not the paraprofessionals, but Maria or Selena, part of Mrs. Curry's department. And then with the health grant related to COVID, we've also been able to secure a translator through that grant as well. So we have staff that are available to provide that service for our families beyond using our paras. So they work kind of at the district level, but schools have access to use them for their purposes.
Right. Thank you. I know they do. And I appreciate that. But I know like Maria Selena can't be in 20 places at the same time. But our building based staff can. And I just really would like to see them valued more.
Thank you for that. And I will let you know that the interpreter that we use for the COVID testing grant will continue this year as well. And we actually made a determination to station him here. So he's helpful when parents come in here, other folks from the community come in here. We have someone right in the building who can address the need, especially if Miss Selena is busy.
Thank you.
Dr. Bonebrake.
Isn't it better to address deficiencies earlier rather than later and easier and more effective? Remember when I was in kindergarten, my parents got a booklet on how to teach your child how to read. And in first grade, they got a booklet on how to teach math. Do we have any resource like that?
So we do have a document that shares with families what the expectations are for students to learn during each school year. But we also, that's part of what we do on those family engagement nights. The intent of those with federal dollars is to build capacity in our parents to help further education beyond the school day. They receive printed resources. They also receive manipulatives and books and things that they can use with their students in the home.
We also are working with a grant through the Kansas Health Foundation for early childhood reading. And so that's what, our read and roll that we just did this year. And we're hoping to expand that for another opportunity. We're hoping to maybe create like a mobile read and roll that will help with that. And we continue to engage with that committee group.
So I do have one more thing, and I was going to say this during the public comment, but now seems like a much better time. So sadly, I had to miss convocation yesterday because I was at this training. I learned something at this training that just is like revolutionary. Have you all heard about, it's called Time Kettle? It's earbuds that will interpret like simultaneously. And it's not like the headphones, like think of like, the UN, it's not like that. So we had a presentation, not from a vendor. It was from a group who does what I do in migrant education out in Western Kansas. And they've started using these earbuds and we're like, so, we're looking it up and turns out it's $130. I'm like, that's not bad. Anyway, it's called Time Kettle. And so the migrant program out in Western Kansas is utilizing it and reporting that it's working pretty well because they have some students, with very little English and of course not enough Spanish speaking staff. And so teacher has the earbuds in and teacher's just teaching and student has the earbuds in. Okay, the downside is it has to be on an app with a phone. I know we're sick of phones in school, but anyway, and so then we asked like, well, then, thinking of like cleanliness, and then the kid goes to the next class and she said, well, we just have those, alcohol wipes, and then the student brings that to the next teacher and cleans them off, puts them in. I don't know. I thought it was very interesting. So my migrant program, we're going to be ordering some Time Kettle. Have you heard of this? Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to our next meeting and further diving into some of this. So thank you for putting that together for us and bringing it to us. Those needs assessment reports are really valuable in each of our buildings. So thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess we have another question.
Sorry, I'm late to the, so as we looked at sort of the challenges that our students have, can you speak a little bit to number 3, which is the amount of time it'll take us to sort of make some progress on that? What in the report, when you all discussed this, what does that timeline look like in your mind, from your perspective?
So what the report should outline is what we think should happen over the next 5 years. So, and I did not bring that. Do you mind showing really quickly?
Is that on the presentation?
Yes. Yes. It's going to be that first page. Mhm. Mhm.
As he brings that PowerPoint back up, Mr. Munoz, this will align, and it's partially, as she shares this will align closely with our strategic plan. And so when we do a needs assessment, whether it's for the federal programs, whether it's a needs assessment to say what are barriers that we're currently experiencing, you will see similar language and or should see that over time embedded in our strategic plan, because these are things we should be addressing. And that strategic plan, remember, we're talking a 3-5-year plan on our strategic plan. So as we look at these components, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Kramer to share a little bit about which comment you were on. You were on number 3, correct, Mr. Munoz? I believe it was number 3.
Number 3 on the, what we as board should be looking at, examining. Yeah.
Yes. So under those barriers.
Yeah. So I mean, 5 years is completely fine. I just want to get a sense of what are we trying to do and what's that timeline that we're sort of challenging ourselves to sort of make some progress on that. That's what I'm most interested in.
Sure. So as Mr. Gowan's pulling that up for me from the actual needs assessment, I think, and what we should focus on is really, recognizing that our mobility impacts us. And so that we can, by looking at breaking down the grade levels and really continue to analyze. And I think we do a great job in our district of already participating in data consults. This is something that our board and our district leaders look at all the time. And so just incorporating that into our practice and making sure that we're continuing to examine how many kids are at which levels and moving them appropriately to get those.
With that, I think the answer of the 5 years was what you were looking for. So we'll pull that on off the screen. And then when we're in those subcommittees, we'll be just highlighting, here are things that were in the needs assessment that Ms. Kramer talked about. Here's where it's at in the strategic plan. Just so we're reminded, this is why this is in the strategic plan as well. We'll turn it back over to you, Ms. Boley. And thank you, Ms. Kramer.
Thank you. So we are down to board comments and committee reports. Mr. Tatum, I believe we got something from Mr. Gowan for our technology. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong committee. I have too many committees, I guess. So did you get that? Okay. Dr. Bonebreak, you have any committee reports or comments?
No committee reports. I'll just comment that convocation was fabulous. I only broke into tears twice, but still, that was very impressive. And that medical issue that came out, and Dr. Anderson did a wonderful Texas two-step and made it a positive event. I don't know how the heck she did that, but got another $1,000, and I think he felt better almost immediately. I just wonder how many people will faint next year. Never mind.
Thank you. Dr. Schumacher.
Okay. Yeah, so we had technology committee on July 24th. We talked a little bit about digital equity and some of the transition, kind of the transition for the TSC Get Digital program and kind of us supporting the city as it moves. The city kind of moves as the operator for the Affordable Connectivity Program. We talked about synergy and kind of the different things around Synergy and its implementation for staff, for parents, for students, and some of the specifics around that. We talked a little bit about online registration and how it was going pretty much about the same as it was last year, which is great with the transition to the new program. We talked about the Know Before cybersecurity campaign and the upcoming deadline for staff to complete that. That's coming up in October. And then this kind of was discussed before with Ms. Kramer, the progress with installing the new interactive panels and getting prepared in the sites where they're installed, but also looking forward for future installations. So that's my committee, and I don't think I have any other specific comments other than being excited. I'm excited for my kids, my patients, for our community to get back into school with K6 and 9 on Tuesday, and then all the other kids on Wednesday. And I'm excited to be at a couple of schools both of those days to welcome them.
Mr. Tatum.
I'll echo those comments about school starting that Dr. Schumacher just made. Definitely looking forward to getting the school year underway. And to piggyback off what Dr. Bonebrake said, convocation is the way to go. You're going to get a body of folks energized and ready for the school year. That is absolutely the way to do it. Even though yesterday was kind of unorthodox in the way that it played out, I still think it was a win all the way around, and am really excited about what we're going to see this upcoming school year. Having said that, I don't think any of my committees met since the last time we've had a board meeting, so nothing to report on that front. But I have to admit, I'm thinking about what Ms. Stewart Campbell shared a bit ago about the time kettle thing. Yeah, I'd really like to see some information on that. So Ms. Stewart Campbell, maybe you could gather some information for us. And okay, I think that's part of what I think is intriguing about it is it appears to be a device that the students are listening with the earbuds, and the teacher is teaching, and the teacher is speaking one language, and the students are hearing it in another language. But it works the opposite way too. If you are trying to understand what your students are saying back to you, well, you may not speak the same language proficiently, but I think the technology could probably work just as well in the reverse order.
And the answer.
Wow, that's phenomenal. That's really exciting. So, okay. All right. Thank you. And that's all I have.
Mr. Munoz.
So we did have a policy committee, and I think a week or two ago, we looked at the policy regarding human resources and regulations. Nothing of substance had changed, but we did make sure that we updated things that needed to be in terms of statutes that needed to be updated, refinement of language. We talked about management of athletic programs, what do we do with the surplus material, obsolete or surplus material? So really interesting stuff. You guys missed it, but we'll have that new updated policy, I think, come before us at some point in the future. Other than that, as far as personal comments. I think I'm excited about school starting soon, as everybody has said. Ditto on yesterday's event. I think lots of people, having people together does something, especially coming out of COVID. And so seeing teachers, seeing paras and maintenance workers and everybody who plays a small part in helping to lift up students, as we said yesterday, as was said yesterday, I think was really impactful. That was my first time being there, so I appreciated it. Thanks to everybody who put that together.
Okay, so one committee that I am on, we're going to be talking about that at our retreat. So I don't have anything to say about that now. Like everyone else, so excited for the beginning of the year. And I just want to shout out to the Link Cruise, which I didn't know what that was until my son started Topeka High 2 years ago. I'm like, what is this? I mean, that they really put out the welcome committee. And it's scary starting high school. It's really scary. So I love it that our freshmen get to have the whole building to themselves, and our sixth graders and our kindergartners at their respective levels. But the Link crew is already in gear. So I just think that's really neat. I know our 3 high schools are already, I don't know if Cap City and Hope Street have Link crews too. They do? Okay, yeah. So that all 5 of our high schools. It's great. So my son is in it now, and I'm like, what'd you do all day? I mean, it was like 8 to 3, and they're going to meet again. And he said they just learned all kinds of like games to do for the incoming freshmen and making posters. And anyway, I just want to thank the Link crews out there. What's that? Oh, their own convocation. Yeah, it is. It's just really, really great. It's a great way to start the year for our new students. And that's all.
I know earlier, thank you for sharing our committee report. We spoke about maybe joining some PTO meetings this year as board members. And since school's here, I was wondering if we could maybe explore that a little bit more and maybe create some schedules around that. Is everyone still interested in, I see Dr. Schumacher is, and talking about legislative concerns and maybe answering some questions about the board if they are interested at all.
So would you like us to give you the board presidents, maybe information in email, or do you want us to coordinate it by asking principals?
I
for
think
a
that
date?
first, yeah.
Okay, so we'll ask principals for the date and
And if they would even want us in the building too, if the PTO would even like for us to be there.
All right, we'll reach out to the administration.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, Dr. Anderson, they were asking about the book that is at our desk.
Well, every year, the leadership team, we have various book studies, normally 2 that we have, and that is really a simple book that we have not heard of, but it is Leadership Made Simple. So we're going to be doing an activity with our principals. But our leadership team, Ms. Whiteman, Ms. Wallace, Mr. Robbins, and Mr. Gowan, Dr. Kipp, and Dr. Gray, and I, we normally pick a book that is scholarly that you may have heard of. That's maybe not as scholarly, but it's a good read. It's a simple read. And at the end of each chapter, it says, here's the simple leadership tip to lead. We thought it would be valuable for our board members as well to have that same material. And you may find that looking through that there may be some chapters that you might want to split up and use for your own continued development as leaders. But it's a really good, simple read. It's Leadership Made Simple. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
I've gotten partway through it. Actually, I'm almost done with it. It's very good and easy. It's an easy read and it gives you a lot to think about. So make sure. I actually had bought it before, so got it before.
I was wondering how you made it.
Yeah. Oh, it's like pretty easy. It's a good one. He has a couple other books too, if you find some interest in it. So if there's nothing else from the board, can I have a motion for adjournment? And so be it. Oh, we need a second for adjournment? Not so fast. Who gives me my second? And we got Dr.